Looking at precious metals, I would say primarily as a wealth preservation asset, it's savings, it's money. But there's a really good argument there that gold and silver, especially silver, could really, I guess you could say, go to the moon.
Welcome to In It to Win It. This is Steve Barton, and thank you for tuning in. We are here with Elijah K. Johnson from Liberty and Finance. They focus on educating people about gold and silver by interviewing expert guests on the subject. Elijah started collecting coins and precious metals as a youth and then started a YouTube channel at 16 years old about gold and silver. That channel has blossomed into what is today Liberty and Finance with 90,000 subscribers and 22 million views. Elijah, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Steve. It's great to be here.
Yes, sir. Okay, let's start out. What got you into precious metals and how did you get your family involved?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, like you said, it really started with coin collecting. I was just interested in, I guess, currency in general. And I remember one thing that was really funny. So I was looking at like the value of pennies, right? So pennies from before 1982 are almost all copper, right? And then they started putting zinc instead because it became too expensive to mint those copper pennies. And each of those pennies, at least when I was looking at this, they were worth about 2 cents. And I thought, that's funny. And different things like that made me think more about, how was money created? And I tried to, so I was homeschooled, right? And my dad was like, well, you just research a bit about it then, write a report on it. So I tried digging into it. My dad helped with some of the research and we couldn't figure it out, honestly, like how money is created, how it comes to be. It has something to do with the Federal Reserve, but that's kind of as far as we got. Then later, when I was about 16, I was researching it again. I was like, I really just want to figure out how this all works. And again, it just didn't make sense. And it seemed kind of like kind of unfair. It's like, why does the government or this semi-private institution, the Federal Reserve, just get to create money out of nothing? It's not backed by anything real. What does that mean? What does that mean for me in my finances? What does that mean for my family and everything like that? So that really, I went down the rabbit hole then of sound money. What are precious metals, gold and silver? Throughout history, gold and silver have been really the only forms of money that have lasted the test of time. So really, I mean, my perspective now, a lot of people ask me, how much gold and silver should I own? It's like, I think that's the wrong question. It's like, well, how much do you want to actually invest in other things? Gold and silver are your savings. And that's how you should think about it, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I noticed the same thing with pennies. And I remember as a kid, my dad always saying, when you sort your change and you roll them in the tubes, look alongside them and pick out the silver and the quarter, the silver dimes and the silver quarters, because they're worth more than the other ones. And that was kind of the spark for me as well. I was like, okay, well, why is it that some of these quarters are worth more than the others? And it wasn't until later in my life that I realized it was the metal content.
Exactly. And that kind of thing has happened throughout history, right? When they debased the coinage, that's exactly what happened in modern day. And of course, Nixon, until 1971, other countries could convert their dollars into gold. Then Nixon was going to, suspend the gold window. And we've never seen that come back. And now we're just on a completely paper currency system that's based on just faith and confidence. And you see how that's been working out with all the bank runs recently. A lot of that faith and confidence is breaking down.
Yeah, it was funny. I remember watching a clip of the president at the time. I think it was Johnson, and he said when they changed in 64 to no more silver in the coins, and he said silver's too valuable to be used as money. And I remember thinking, I'm like, I thought money was supposed to be valuable. Maybe I'm off. Maybe I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, and the funny thing is, silver in a lot of different languages is money. It's the same word.
Lata. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What is your big picture view of the precious metals and financial markets?
Yeah, the interesting thing, I think I can be a bit too philosophical sometimes, especially even just like day-to-day life. I try to live a principled life, which is a good thing, but it's also good to apply those principles to your life and every day, right? So sometimes I can get a bit abstract and I can think, well, paper currency always falls to zero, so that's going to happen right away. And it's like, well, Rick Roll mentions, if something's inevitable, it doesn't mean that it's imminent. So there are a lot of truths that I've, figured out philosophically of the US dollar is going to collapse someday. Um, the whole financial system is based on faith and confidence. So what we see now in the financial system, that's not going to be here forever. That doesn't mean it's going to happen right away. But I guess if you want to really give a macro view of things, is that you should have, and this isn't financial advice, but this is my personal view, that people should have a portion of their wealth outside of the financial system in preparation for a worst case scenario. So that doesn't mean we're going to see hyperinflation tomorrow. Things have gone on a lot longer than I thought they were going to happen. We've seen the national debt. I remember, being concerned about the national debt when it was $10 trillion, just 10 years ago or whatever. Now it's $30 trillion. Who knows? It could be $100 trillion later. We don't know how long this is gonna last. But the fact of the matter is that precious metals have been a store of value throughout history, and they've never gone to zero. So that's something that I can be certain about, regardless of what time frame we're actually looking at. One of the things that I was kind of reflecting on is, to, I guess, there has been there's been a speeding up of events recently, obviously in the banking system, and something that has really caught my attention. And I guess again, this is kind of more of a philosophical point, but it's really like, yeah, there is no, just by logic alone, you can really see it doesn't seem like there's really any good solution for the Fed right now. They've expanded their balance sheet over the last 10 years, 10 or so years since the 2008 crisis. I guess 15 years now. So much, it's gone from 800, $900 billion to $9 trillion. And what we've seen is a lot of inflation. And the trap that the Fed is in right now is if they raise rates, which they've been doing, we start seeing cracks in the system. We've started to see bank failures. But if they decrease interest rates, then inflation runs hot. So it's like there seems to be, again, like what I was saying, like using logic and reason. I love doing that using philosophy. This is kind of a situation where it seems like, there really is no good solution out there. So I am very concerned about the financial system in the next 5 to 10 years or so, because it seems like something big has to happen, and or there's no good solution, at least that I can honestly see out there.
Yeah, me neither. I really like the idea. I am so glad I found this sector to just get a portion of your net worth, and you're nodding as I'm talking here. Just get a portion of your net worth outside the system and store it in the form of these coins and bars, and protect yourself from the chaos that is inevitably going to consume the financial markets. What How could gold and silver prepare us for the coming financial crisis?
Yeah, so there's kind of two different lines of thinking out there, that gold and silver are insurance, and then other people are looking at gold and silver as kind of a speculative asset. Those are kind of the two extremes. To it's a financial crisis, then gold and silver are going to go to the moon. I would say somewhere kind of in the middle is where I'm at. I think gold and silver are more than insurance, because they're actually something of value, and they're going to have value regardless of what happens. So like if you have insurance on something, you only collect on that insurance if something bad happens. And you don't want that to happen. But gold and silver are a preservation of wealth. I just had Doomberg on it on our channel, and I'll be posting that tonight. And he kind of said a similar thing, is it's like a preservation of wealth. A mid-sized, a nice SUV nowadays is going to be about 20 ounces of gold. And probably sometime in the future, it'll be about 20 ounces of gold. So it's a preservation of wealth. I would go a step further to say 100% agree with that, that it's a preservation of wealth. You can look at it kind of as insurance because it's a preparation for a worst case scenario, but it's more than that. And then I think it also has a great potential upside, but that's not the primary reason most people should be looking at precious metals. I would say primarily as a wealth preservation asset, it's savings, it's money. But there's a really good argument there that gold and silver, especially silver, could really, I guess you could say, go to the moon. Maybe we'll see. But I don't think that should be the primary reason you should be investing. And I mean, I don't think you should bet everything you have on silver just because you think it's going to go to the moon. I think that's a poor choice right there.
Yeah. Yeah. What you're talking about, preservation of wealth. I had a personal thing. I bought a house, and the construction costs of the accessory dwelling unit that I was building in the back, man, talk about having to buy construction materials is at exactly the wrong time. This was during COVID, when, we get 80 or 90% of our lumber from Canada. And that's when the truckers went on strike. And it went from, $2.50 or $3 for a straight perfect 2x4 to $14 for a crooked one. And so I turned in some of my gold coins for cash so that I could complete the unit. And I bought them at, I think it was $1,600. And a couple of years later, I sold them for $1,750. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It kept up with inflation. And a couple of years later, had I kept that in paper cash, I would still have $1,600. But because I put it into something that, generally speaking, follows the increase in the currency supply, I was able to cash it in for the same value, but increased in nominal value. Okay. What do you see as some of the biggest risks to our current financial system?
The Fed is trapped, right? There is no good situation right now. And if you look throughout history, how fiat currency, paper currency systems that aren't backed by anything end up is you end up going into higher and higher inflation. That's typically the way that it ends up. And it seems like that's the road on which we're going. Typically, creating money and having that hidden tax of inflation is a more popular way, to go, instead of just, increasing interest rates. I know Powell is trying to do that, but it doesn't seem like that's a long-term situation, given that, when the national debt, they have to roll over the debt into new higher interest rates. It's like, how are we going to actually service the debt in that case? How are we going to pay the higher interest rates at that point? So it seems like the greatest risk that I see is higher inflation going forward. Even, for example, with the banking crisis right now, a lot of people are concerned, what do I do with my money in the bank? Is it safe right now? Is the FDIC going to insure all my deposits, even if they're above $250,000? I think that's kind of missing the point, because what we've seen, probably they will insure them. But if it came to that point where a lot of more banks, more and more banks had to be bailed out, or the FDIC had to come in and rescue them, then we'd have an inflation issue on our hands. And it wouldn't be so much the question of, am I going to get my money out of the bank, is how much is my money going to be worth at that point? Yeah. So yeah, I think it's kind of the wrong question right now that's being asked about the banking system. I think the greatest concern I see out there is, higher inflation in the years to come.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You're a licensed broker now with Miles Franklin. And what patterns have you noticed since becoming a broker with Miles Franklin?
Patterns with respect to what in particular?
Like, I guess, as far as a change in premiums, we've seen a run up in premiums in the Eagles. They're producing a lot less out of the American Mint, things like that. Junk silver, which coins have the lowest premiums? Do you notice? At least I talked about it on your show the other day, that I noticed that it seems like people seem to purchase more when the price is running up and they purchase less when the price is going down. Do you see the same thing? You got a much better macro view than I do, just stopping by coin shops.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's a really good question. And I would say to answer the last question first, there is that I see a actually an increase in demand from returning clients when the price drops. If the price
Ah,
is going up, gold maybe hitting near an all-time high or whatever, then you'll get a lot of new people jumping in. So that's kind of what I've seen. But yeah, you actually see a lot of physical demand, kind of ironically, when the price drops. And
okay.
then with respect to premiums as well, when you see a higher demand, obviously the premium increases on the whole side as well. That's kind of what I see as well. So when it comes to kind of what coins increase more, over the last few years, we've really seen extreme premiums on everything across the board, but especially US minted products. So you're looking at the Silver Eagles being dramatically overpriced, in my opinion. 15, 16. I saw 18 over spot a few months back, and that's just insane. I mean, what there are a few reasons I would say to purchase the Silver Eagles at that point, but if you're really just looking to preserve your wealth and selling back to a major bullion dealer in the future, I would probably stay away from them. Some people want to get the Silver Eagles because it's a US minted product, and they want something in preparation for like a worst case scenario where they have to barter. Then you're kind of looking at the insurance side of it. And yeah, it doesn't really matter what the price of insurance is. Get it, if you're concerned about that. So that's U.S. minted coins. Junk silver are great in that. Would probably be great in like a worst case scenario like that. After the U.S. minted coins, the next highest premium is typically going to be the Canadian mint. And then you're looking at the four other major mints. So that's Austria, Australia, the UK, and South Africa. So those are the main six mints out there. And pretty much the after the US and Canada, the other four are typically priced around the same premium. And then you get the bars, and the general rule is if it's a private mint, you're going to be paying a little bit less premium. And if it's a larger product, you're going to be paying a lower premium per ounce. So it really depends on what your needs are, what kind of product you want. But if you really just want the most silver for your dollar, the larger bars are a great way to do that. But you do sacrifice some divisibility in that
Yeah.
case. And they're probably not going to be a good option for like a worst case scenario if you had to barter with it. But if you're not concerned about that, larger bars are a great way to just kind of invest in the silver itself or the gold.
Yeah, the coins are kind of nice for. I get people asking me all the time, and they're like, "Hey, I'm going to buy 100 ounces. What should I get?" Coins. Pick one of those four mints that you were talking about. And they're like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, you can trim your position. Once this starts to scale up, you can sell 7 or 14 coins at a time. You don't have a giant 100-ounce bar that like, well, this is all or nothing. You know.
Exactly.
Um, Okay, what other investments do you have other than gold and silver? Do you have platinum, palladium, and anything else?
Yeah, I would say with respect to platinum and palladium and like the precious metals, platinum poses a really interesting opportunity, I guess you could say. I'll kind of give you the argument here. And obviously, again, no financial advice here. You take this or leave it. But typically, platinum has been double gold's price or, multiples of gold's price or at least higher than gold's price throughout history. Right now, it's about half the price of gold. So one of the reasons for that is industry has switched over to palladium in certain circumstances because palladium's price was way lower a few years back, but then we saw a huge run up in palladium. I have honestly never sold palladium. So I don't know if that means it's a good opportunity. I personally don't think it is because it's very high priced historically. And I think platinum is a better opportunity right now. It's more of a speculative play though, just based on price ratios and the argument also that platinum may be reintroduced, for example, into catalytic converters, because it's lower than palladium now, so they'd have to switch that over, and that could increase platinum's price. So it's a speculative play. It's not a monetary metal, so it's very different than gold and silver. It's a lot of people say, if the economy crashes, it's not going to do very well because it is such an industrial metal. So kind of back to your original question of what happens, how do you prepare for a financial crisis and what happens to precious metals? Yes, they're insurance. Yes, they're a store of value. But I think in financial crisis, gold and silver typically actually increase purchasing power. And a lot of people don't point this out, that yes, they can preserve purchasing power, but there are certain time periods where you'll put a certain amount of, if gold's at $2,000 right now, right, and 20 ounces of gold can buy a nice mid-sized SUV right now, then if there's a large financial crisis, it's possible that 20 ounces of gold may buy three, or four mid-sized SUVs in the future. So the purchasing power of precious metals does actually fluctuate. So it's not just a perfect preservation of wealth. And if you play it right, you can take advantage of those fluctuations.
Yeah, I just had Rob Keents on. He's coming out the next day or so, that episode. And we brought up the gold to house average US home price. And you can see there, if you time it well, you can literally trade this stuff for houses like you're talking about. Back to platinum, I'm going to share my screen here, and this will just emphasize your point. You can see the chart here, and this is gold to platinum ratio. And we look back over history, and this up here is when the ratio was north of 2-to-1, right? Back in 01 and 08. And this is where we are here, right? So we take, right now, it costs you, this is a platinum coin and this is a gold coin. Basically, you can purchase two of these for the price of one of these now. But if you go back over history, it's the other way around. You could trade one of these platinum coins for two of these gold coins. So it's a speculation, but you could, if you time it correctly, you might be able to essentially trade one platinum coin for two gold coins. Or if we go to the silver ratio chart here, I mean, back during around the same time in history, it was 140, 150 ounces of silver for one platinum coin. Right now, it's only 40, 45, right? So this is 45 ounces of silver. If this follows pattern, and who's to say it will or won't, but you could get 150 ounces for 1 ounce of platinum. Who knows? It's speculation. And like you said, platinum's not money, gold and silver is, but it might be an opportunity to buy some platinum now, and when the ratio reverses, then take advantage of that.
And definitely, and it's interesting. You mentioned premiums before as well. We were talking about that. People have taken advantage of some crazy premium swings recently. I have had clients who have swapped in silver eagles in exchange, for 1,000-ounce bars, and pocketed that, $8 spread there or so. I think a buyback on silver eagles for a swap had gone as high as like $12 or so per ounce. So you're looking at, 50% premium above the spot price. We were at that point offering to buy back, and you could swap into a very low premium product. So as you mentioned, those ratios, you can really take advantage of them sometimes. And if you play them right, you can really make a good profit.
You can get a lot more silver. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Elijah. Do you have any final thoughts, or, let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you?
Oh, sure. Definitely. I guess final thoughts is just, keep things simple for yourself. I mean, look at the risks on the financial system for yourself, kind of figure out, okay, what do I really want to prepare for? What do I not want to prepare for? You can't prepare for everything, right? And when it comes to investing in precious metals, it can sometimes be a lot more complicated. It seems a lot more complicated. Really, it just comes down to like, what size product do you want and how recognizable do you need it to be? If it's a smaller product, US minted, it's going to be the highest premium. If it's a larger product, a private mint, it's going to be a lower premium. It really comes down to that. You don't have to make things too complicated. But yeah, if people want to find us, it's just youtube.com/libertyandfinance, libertyandfinance.com. All our stuff is there. Our phone number's there, the 888-81-LIBERTY. That's 888-815-4237. If they'd like to get a hold of us, talk about, investing in precious metals. Is that a good thing for them? We can't give financial advice, but we can kind of talk through, here are the products we offer, here are the positives and negatives of the products. So I'd be happy to help anybody who's interested.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Elijah. There will be a link down in the show notes. And thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time.